It's mission revival.
Yeah.
Because it is exactly the true definition of mission revival, because mission revival is actually something that doesn't really exist, right? Mission revival is an interpretation of 1700s and in the 1900s, and that's what this is. So.
Sit right there.
I'm going to give this to him. Yes. Gosh. Craig?
Good evening. Welcome to the regular meeting of the Ojai Historic Preservation Commission. Public communications, members of the public wishing to address the Historic Preservation Commission on items appearing on the agenda are requested to complete a speaker card and file it with the secretary prior to the start of the Historic Preservation Commission meeting. Cards are available in the council chambers lobby. All comments should be limited to 3 minutes unless additional time is granted by the chair. Speakers should state their name and address for the record and must direct their comments to the chair, not the audience or press. While the Historic Preservation Commission is in session, members of the commission, city staff, and members of the audience are expected to maintain order and decorum and to obey the orders of the chair. We've already had our Pledge of Allegiance, so I'll skip that tonight if there is no objection. And with that, I will turn it over to Museum Representative Mark Lewis for his report.
Long time no see,
Mr. Lewis, did you have something, Mr. Winiger?
I just want to acknowledge for the record that all the commissioners are present. We did take roll at the special meeting.
Thank you. I'm sorry, Mr. Lewis, go ahead.
Chairman McCready, Vice Chairman Akins, and Commissioners, thank you for having me back again. It's been so long. I will spare you a recitation of the most recent news regarding the museum, which you're all familiar with, and we're quite happy about. Generally speaking, we have, the other news that we would have to share with you, which I think you'll enjoy, is that we have finished and are ready to launch and celebrate the museum edition, 3rd edition of Patricia Fry's iconic illustrated history of the Ojai Valley, updated and greatly expanded by Elise DuPoit and Mr. Craig Walker. We're going to have a launch and celebration and book signing and discussion on June 3rd. That's a Saturday from 5 to 7. And it's a wonderful accomplishment, just to pat ourselves on the back, but mostly Craig and Elise. And of course, the original work of Ms. Fry. This is expanded. It's terrific. We urge you all to have a look. And it's I think a wonderful benefit for the community. So. Other than that, we have the ongoing Ojai Studio Artist Show. It's just opened. We urge you to come to see that. And there's artist talks every Saturday. Well, that's through June 17th, I think, from 11 to noon. And with that, I thank you.
Well, thank you. With that, we'll move to consent item number 2, minutes of the April 13th, 2017.
Actually,
Go ahead, Mr. Winiger.
You have a first order of business is to elect your officers.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Next 12-year period.
You're right.
Next 12-month period, rather. So your staff, there's a staff report that indicates the order of business concerning nomination of a new chair and vice chair. So with that, I suggest that our present chairman conduct the election.
I will open it up for nominations for chair for the upcoming year.
I nominate Brian Akins.
I second that motion.
Seems like a repeat from last year, doesn't it? Actually, I will hold that just a minute. I had talked with Chair McCready today to ask him if he was willing to stay another year. So I'm just kind of on hold right now pending that answer. But I do appreciate the support so far. So
May I ask a question? I didn't realize that Chairman McCready was available to continue. So if that's the case, I would be pleased with that as well.
So the pressure is on Chair McCready at the moment, so.
I've served as chair for 3 years. I'm happy to continue to do so. I think that, that it could well be time for a change if the other commissioners are looking to do that. So, Mr. Akins, are you not interested in the position?
Not to be campaigning, but actually I'm enjoying the position I enjoy, so.
Are there any other
That I
nominations?
currently hold, so.
Are there any other nominations?
Well, I don't know if it's legal for me to do this or not. Since I seconded Brian's nomination, am I able to nominate somebody else as the nominator?
You may.
Yes.
Even, and maintain your second on the previous nomination, but yet you may nominate another individual.
So I'll nominate Darwin McCready for.
Oh. I second.
Mr. Chairman, I would ask you to solicit if there are any other nominations.
Are
for
there any
chairman.
other nominations for chair? And do we take a vote, or?
In that case, you might want to take a vote at this point, and given the consensus, you might want to take the vote on your nomination first.
Okay, so on the nomination for chair for the upcoming year, Commissioner Hill,
I vote for Darwin.
Commissioner Quinn,
Yes, for Darwin.
Commissioner James, Akins,
A yes for you.
Convery.
Yes for you.
That is so moved, and I'm moved.
That motion does carry, Mr. Chairman.
I will open up
Just for the purposes of order, I would ask you to determine if the nomination for Mr. Akins for chair would be withdrawn at this time. For chair.
we need to move that.
I would ask that the makers of that motion withdraw that nomination at this time.
I withdraw the nomination.
And I withdraw the second.
Thank you.
Thank you.
With that, I'll open it up for nominations for vice chair.
Well, I
Commissioner Hill.
nominate Brian.
Oh, shoot.
So we have a motion from Commissioner Quinn, a second from Commissioner James. Commissioner Hill?
Oh, I would vote for Brian and second it or whatever.
Quinn?
Yes.
James? Commissioner McCready, yes. Convery?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and congratulations to Mr. McCready and Mr. Akins once again.
Thank you. With that, I will move on to item number 2, minutes of the April 13th, 2017 regular meeting. Are there any corrections or comments from commissioners?
Before we do that, can I ask a question? Because I was going through our package, and I was looking at the minutes, and I went, well, that didn't happen. Well, that didn't happen. Well, that didn't happen, until I looked and saw the minutes actually were of 2015,
2016.
2016.
Yeah, we have minutes
Is there a
from you.
reason? We're looking at the 2016
Yeah,
minutes?
Thursday, April 14th, 2016. Yeah.
Brian, I think it's not on the agenda, so I just think it slipped in there by accident, because it didn't get onto the agenda for
Okay.
any reason.
Or does it have something to do with an item that's going to come before us?
I think that's what it
Is
is.
it just there for information?
Sure.
I saw it too, and now I can't find it.
I know, same thing for
Page
me.
3 of 5 and 2 of 5.
But my question is then, why isn't it packaged with
Oh,
that
yeah, here it is.
item as
Yeah,
like a,
right.
Yeah, it's,
you know,
It's probably a mistake, I
as
think,
an
Mr.
exhibit?
Winiger.
It's not an exhibit for the item.
Yes, I think,
I think the minutes from April 14th, 2016 are in here because we, at that meeting,
took the vote?
talked about,
No, I think it's because we that's the last time we voted for the chair, maybe. Because the vote for the chair was 13 months.
Maybe.
Right, maybe. Because it wasn't a big,
Find it?
I wish I knew the answer to that. I don't, but the proper minutes are listed as item 2 after your fold, so I
Thank you.
apologize for the confusion.
Thank you. With that,
Are we?
we're
moving on to
reviewing,
minutes?
we're reviewing the May 11th, 2017 minutes.
Okay, so I just,
I mean, the
May-
May 3rd.
April,
I just cornered City Attorney Matt Summers, and he agreed that we could make this change. So on page 5 of 7, when Commissioner Akins moved and Commissioner Convery seconded the motion to make a recommendation to the city council, I described the Smith-Hobson property, but then with all of our discussions on the Libby House, I said the Libby State, so according to Mr. Summers, we can amend these or correct these to say Smith-Hobson rather than Libby Estate.
certainly.
None of us noticed that, but my dear friend, Mr. Ojai at home was jumping up and down in his bed going, "They said the wrong thing." And he thought he texted me, but he emailed me, so
Got it.
thank you, David. So I just would ask that that correction be made from Libby Estate to Smith-Hobson property.
Thank you.
And I have a correction on page 4 under commissioner comments. Just my name is misspelled.
Okay,
in the
thank
very
you.
first
Yes,
sentence.
I see that. Thank you. Just, I want to be sure I get the right reference. Commissioner Akins, what page?
It's on page 5 of 7, it's the motion made on item number 4.
Oh, yes, I see, okay. Yeah, thank you.
And I will sleep well now.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any other corrections or comments?
I think we're good.
Yes, so if you take a motion, Mr. Chairman?
Commissioner Hill?
I agree.
Do we have a motion to approve the minutes?
I make a motion, we approve the minutes.
So moved. Commissioner Hill?
Yes.
Quinn?
Yes.
James?
Yes.
Akins?
Yes.
McCready, yes. Convery?
Yes.
With that, we'll move to item 3, discussion of the Ojai Grammar School Phase 1 Historic Resource Survey. Mr. Winiger?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Make sure I get the right file here. Yes, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, this is consideration of the Historic Resource Survey for the Ojai Grammar School, also known as Chaparral School, also known as Nordoff Grammar School, also known as the administrative offices for the Ojai Unified School District. This is one of 2 historic resource reports that the commission sought.
Excuse me, we're out of order. We should be doing a disclosure of
Oh.
site visits and ex parte.
Thank you, Commissioner Hill.
Sorry, you're right.
Before we start the meet.
I visited the site for item 3.
I went by it, looked around it.
I also drove past it and looked at it.
And I walked it.
Thank
I
you.
didn't make any special efforts to go there.
Okay.
Just drove by 40 times.
One of the prospects of something coming up is the fact that we might have a retreat, which we'll talk about later on in the docket. But and my visits, I visited all the monuments and markers that we currently have, and the potential for new sites. And I visited the Main Street Water Trough, the Memorial Rock and Civic Center Park, the Tom Clark Trough at Rotary Park, the Firefighters Rock Monument at the Y, and the Children's Early Death Postmarkers. And I also visited a place for potential markers at the Olive Mill, the train station, and the Ojai Orange Packing house.
Thank you. Mr. Hill. Go ahead, Mr. Winiger.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is one of two historic resource reports that the Historic Preservation Commission requested funding for from the City Council and were initiated last year. Both reports, both this one and the one for the Smith-Hobson House, which the Commission has previously considered, were prepared by Carol Donato of the Providence Group. The Commission is very familiar with the site and with the school facility itself. I'll just give a brief summary, which is that in 1927, the site was previously, has been the site of a school there for some time. In 1895, a two-story wood frame structure was established for the Nordhoff Grammar School at that site. In 1927, architect Roy Wilson, widely respected and regarded architect from Santa Paula, was commissioned to design a new school for the site to replace that wood frame structure, and the school was occupied in 1929. In 1932, arcades were added to the structure to provide additional shelter. In 1937, an auditorium was constructed on the east side of the property, along with some additional classrooms. In 1954, the school belfry, which was a focal point of the original structure designed by Mr. Wilson, was altered due to seismic considerations. The bell itself from that structure was placed in front of the school district offices. And in 1976, the school was closed and became the offices of the school district. The conclusion of the report is that the school structure itself has been altered to this degree that it can no longer be considered for the California or national registers. However, the site and the structures do qualify for listing as a local City of Ojai historic landmark. As a result of a conversation, I believe, with Mr. Walker, Ms. Donato did review the aspects of the auditorium structure independently and concluded that although it has also been altered as well, it would be eligible for registration with the California Register, but would not be eligible for consideration for the National Register. So that's a summary of the report. I can go in more detail if the Commission would like, but at this point I would turn it over to the Chair.
Commissioner Hill?
Yeah, I have one question in regard to that. I think it gives us some more flexibility now that the auditorium has been essentially split off from the rest of the property, and in consideration for historical consideration. I'm also wondering about the kindergarten class compound down there at the northwest corner of the property, which is now it's a preschool or some private operation is in there. Is that being considered among the whole property of what we're talking about for when they consider the Ojai Elementary School?
Yes, the entire property was considered.
So that's part of our consideration for this?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
With that, I'll open it up to public comment. Craig Walker.
Good afternoon. I would like to commend the Providence Group for their well-researched and detailed historic report on the Ojai Grammar School property. The report revealed some exciting historical information that was not generally known before. It revealed that the school's auditorium, which has served as a community auditorium for over 80 years, was a New Deal Public Works Administration project. For years, we thought the old firehouse was the city's only New Deal project. The cafeteria's beginnings as a 1930s PWA project only adds to its historical significance, and I think this fact should be called out in the report under criteria number 1. Just last week, the museum received an inquiry from a Nordhoff High School student about the legacy of the New Deal here in Ojai. I was able to describe to him the Public Works Administration and how it funded projects all over America, like the Chaparral Auditorium. I contacted the author of the report, and she acknowledged that if the auditorium were analyzed on its own, it would most likely qualify for the California Register of Historic Places. But the scope of the report was focused on the school as a whole, which resulted in some overall integrity being lost because of the changes to the bell tower in the main building. The other new thing I learned was that the kindergarten building and superintendent's office up front were designed by Maynard Linden. Maynard Linden was a pioneering architect who helped create the modern American elementary school back in the 1940s and 1950s. He invented a window system that he called the Ojai section that distributed natural light throughout the classroom. His most famous Ojai school was actually Miners Oaks Elementary School, but he also designed Miramonte School and Oakview Elementary School when it was a part of the Nordhoff School District. His work on the Ojai Grammar School in 1953 modernized the school and added the new kindergarten building. And I was in touch with the Maynard Linden Archive, which is up at UCSB, and they have all the plans from that era, as well as quite a few of them from Roy Wilson. So that could be a resource for the future. Unfortunately, the historic report does not include, and this was something that I talked to Ms. Donato about, it does not include Linden's kindergarten building because she said the scope of the report was only on the Spanish buildings. But as one of Maynard Linden's modern school designs, the kindergarten building is historic in its own right. I would hope the report could be modified to reflect that and have that wonderful modern Maynard Linden kindergarten building as part of the overall historic report, if it's not already. Maybe I misunderstood her. Regardless of these issues, which I believe understate the true historic value of the school, the report concludes clearly and definitively that the buildings are historic and meet the criteria for designation as a City of Ojai landmark. Any future use of this property should take the historic nature of these buildings into consideration. Only adaptive reuse projects which preserve the exterior architecture of the buildings should be considered. The old firehouse is a good example of the adaptive reuse of an historic building. It's been a museum, a ceramic studio, and now a wine tasting room, yet the historic WPA fireplace facade has been kept intact. The grammar school buildings are part of Ojai's historic legacy and should be tastefully adapted to a new use while preserving their historic exteriors. Ideally, they would even be restored. It would be wonderful if that tower could be restored. Cities like Los Angeles grant development bonuses to builders who restore the exteriors of historic buildings and adaptively reuse their interior space. It would be great if the city could offer a bonus to developers who would preserve these buildings and even restore the original tower. Thank you.
Thank you. I really wholeheartedly agree with the comment about the mid-century modern school buildings, and I think the Miners Oaks School won an AIA award, honor award.
And also, the Miners Oaks School, that kindergarten is listed in Gephardt's listing of the most important architectural buildings in California. So he's a significant importance in architecture. Also, I have a special liking for the kindergarten building down there because my wife taught there for 15, 20 years.
I have a question.
Commissioner Convery?
Sorry, about your reference to the mid-century modern building. If we're landmarking or acknowledging the entire property, do we designate that in a separate registration, or it's all one piece? So how do you divide
Well, I
that?
think-
That's the purpose of my.
I think it's a big part of our conversation tonight because that's an important building. I agree with Mr. Walker.
But it's all right on
So-
the same property, so wouldn't it fall under the umbrella of
Well,
that?
do you want to approach Mr. Walker?
I know that the Secretary of the Interior standards say that new additions that are significant in their own right can become part of the landmark and preserved as part of it. And I think the fact that the school was modernized and then was had these additions done by this famous architect and obviously paid close attention to what he was doing in regard to the whole building. The only thing I'm still trying to research is whether or not the taking down of the tower and the new little more truncated tower, whether Maynard Linden had anything to do with that design. So far, the museum up in Santa Barbara hasn't been able to find anything that shows he had anything to do with that tower coming down. But I put in a request with the state architect, because anything that's done to a school has to be filed with the state architect. So they're going to look through their files and see.
So can I ask you a question, Mr. Walker?
Yeah.
Do you know whether this elementary school and Miners Oaks and Miramonte and Oakview schools, were they all like a family of buildings that were constructed at the same time?
Well, they weren't at the same time, but there is a letter up at the museum at UCSB in which Mr. Linden writes to Roy Wilson and says, look, I've been the district's architect for 10 years, and now the district is looking to get somebody else. This was in like 1956. So apparently they formed a connection with him, and starting in 1949 with Miners Oaks Elementary School and working their way up, he designed that school in Miners Oaks and the one in Oakview and the one in Miramonte, and then did this work on the Ojai Elementary, and then must have moved on from there. And he's just a wonderful architect. I've been in touch. I've been working on another book for the Arts Commission on Ojai architecture, and we're going to feature that, built the Miners Oaks Elementary in the book. And I got a hold of his two sons, who both became architects. And he designed Bunch Hall at UCLA. I don't know, back when I was a student at UCLA in the 60s, it was known as the Waffle because it has these...
70s too.
In the 70s too. So he designed that building. He was quite an ingenious designer. And when you look at the papers that have been written about this Ojai section he did at Miners Oaks, the way he designed these louvers and the clerestory windows, and they did studies, and it showed how the natural light came through and just filled the whole place very evenly with light. And it became a very groundbreaking school. And I don't doubt that he did several little things like that there and at the school in
Man, Jimmy
Ojai.
France isn't still alive. He could give you first-hand accounts because that was his room for years.
Oh, the one
in Miners Oaks.
yeah, but he did the whole school, not just the,
Oh, I realize that.
Yeah.
But that kindergarten building at Miners Oaks has that big circular
right, the
thing
big
on
window.
the ceiling, and it's a very interesting room to be in.
Thank you.
May
Commissioner Convery?
Mr. Walker, could you talk a little bit about the National Register and the California Register? Do you know anything about the differences? And why is Chaparral Auditorium not qualified? I mean, we got a revised report, so I can't reference, I didn't print it out.
Well, you know, and I read through the report because apparently, according to the author, it had to do with the integrity of the building, and there have been some changes, like in the windows and things like that. But also they added the building on the front, the superintendent's office,
Right.
that was Maynard Linden, and then back in the back, they did the kindergarten. But one of the big things that she felt reduced the integrity of the building was the reduction of the tower, because that was such a beautiful
It was.
big landmark feature of it. So she felt that reduced the integrity of the building enough that it wouldn't qualify as a national building or a state building. But then she said in there that the auditorium was practically completely intact, and that it was this New Deal building. So I wrote to her, and she very nicely responded and said, well, the scope of the report was the whole thing as a whole. So this one big reduction kind of took it out of the realm of the whole school, out of the California level. But I still wondered, I mean, I didn't see a lot of specifics in the report as to why it reduced it that much. I would have liked to have seen a little more. But the auditorium itself apparently does have enough integrity, and being a WPA project, that it could on its own be on the California register.
So I'm looking at this report, and we had 2 revised reports, I think, that came through. So, and I understood that the school qualified the whole entire property for National Register, but the Chaparral Auditorium qualified for California Register.
That's
but it's the other way around?
Well,
or?
that's not what I read. I read that the whole school, if you take the whole school as a whole, she didn't feel it had enough integrity as a whole unit to qualify for either the California
either
or
one.
the national. But she agreed that if you were to just take off that one building and apply separately for it, that it might very well make the California register anyway.
Okay.
Because its integrity has
Yeah.
been compromised.
Yeah, I just wanted,
And it's
because
got
we
that extra WPA little boost to it.
Yeah. I just wanted to be clear, because we did get 3 kind of versions of this pretty quickly, so, thank you.
Are there any other comments or questions?
Yeah,
Mr. Akins?
I have a comment as kind of following this through. So we first found out that there was a report available when Councilman Wyrick brought it to in preparation for a discussion that the city council was having with the school districts, and that he had gotten a copy because he called to ask them for it. Now we get our copy, and I see that it is dated February 1st, 2017. And that's received February 1st, 2017, Community Development Department. And that's something that we've asked for in several meetings, and I'm guessing that you may not have been aware of it, Mr. Winiger, because
Aware of what?
that we actually had this report clear back in February 1st.
It was submitted February 1st, but staff did not really receive it until a week or so later. And it took some time. Frankly, we were focused on the other report, so we weren't able to give a lot of attention to this report. And then we did request some changes. So there was some time involved in getting this to you.
Okay, well, I'm happy to see it now, and it seems like it's getting a lot of attention because it was revised yesterday, and then this morning when I came to pick up yesterday's version, Sherry was kind enough to print me out this morning's version, and so the attentiveness is caught up.
Yes.
So I appreciate that very much.
Yes, and I'll apologize for the many different versions that you received. As our attention's been divided, quite frankly, on a couple of different things here. The version that you received earlier this week was updated to discuss defining elements. Thank you very much. And that is a paragraph that is added on. Let me see. On page 27, second paragraph under 6.1, so additional information was provided there. And then the latest revision was due to the re-evaluation of the auditorium building based on the conversation with Mr. Walker. So, yes, that probably could have been evaluated or identified sooner, but as was explained, the whole site was considered in context, and as opposed to picking out certain elements that might qualify for registers and so on. So, but I do think it was appropriate to have that reevaluation.
Great, and thank you
Thank
for
you.
that. So the other question I have then too, because again, in looking at the Smith Hobson property, we ended up first talking about the house on which it was. There were other sites like the barn that were important, the tennis court that were important, and so the motion was made to include all of the property. So my question is to our commission is, are we talking about specific buildings? The ones that were, let's see, it looks like and it's provenience, like in convenience. Sherry checked on that when she talked to him. I guess she picked up that discussion. And so my question is, are we talking about specific buildings? For example, the auditorium, the main building, and now it looks like further discussion needs to take place on, or inclusion needs to take place on whether to include the kindergarten room. Are we talking about specific buildings? Are we talking about the entire property? And the reason I asked this is initially we had asked for the historic report so that we could be out in front of the discussion. And because of the delay, we are now behind the discussion. I didn't have a chance to watch the joint meeting with the city council and the planning commission on Tuesday night, but I understand that there was discussion on where the school is now. There is some disagreement on what the school thinks should happen to that property and versus what the city council thinks should happen to that property versus what the community thinks should happen to that property. And at most times they seem like they're wildly different. Go figure. Welcome to Ojai. So I'm just wondering, what are we talking about? Are we talking about the whole property? Are we talking about specific buildings, or what are we talking about?
That's my question too. And I'm so happy that Mr. Walker's here and he brought up the subject of the kindergarten building and the Maynard Linden work, because it's so important. And I know about the discussions with the school board and the city, and I think that the thrust of those discussions has always been that, is landmarking going to encumber the property so that it could not have some unforeseen use? And I've always felt that it was the position of this commission that it was an asset for landmarking was an asset, and my goodness, we've had one of our landmarks being turned into a bar. So I think we've proved ourselves to be pretty flexible with adaptive reuse in our landmarks. With that, I'd open that up to discussion. Mr. Hill?
My question is, considering, oh, Mike, it's on.
Okay.
It's turned over here. My question is, what time constraint or pressure is on us as a commission to come up with what we think is the solution? Or can we just say, okay, we would like to see the auditorium treated specifically, the tower, the Carlton Winslow section of it, Roy Wilson section of it, and the Linden kindergarten. Make three components as being historic, and as far as the rest of it, that's up to the school district. But we can see three distinct parcels out of this and divide it up rather than consider the thing as a massive operation.
By divide it up, do you mean divide up the landmarking? Or the recommendations?
No, well, maybe. That would require three different reports.
Yes, and we don't have the funds for that.
Mr. Chairman, actually, if I may make an observation.
Mr.
I think that we could beef up the report to address the the mid-century element of the site. I think that the commission has full flexibility in identifying what you think to be relevant in terms of identifying an Ojai landmark.
Right.
It can include all three of the elements that Commissioner Hill just identified, and you could also recommend that the auditorium be further investigated for potential listing as a California, on the California Register. So I think you have full flexibility here, and we can provide more justification on the mid-century element if you'd like that. But I think that all those elements qualify for local landmark designation.
But that still doesn't answer my question, is what time constraint are we under and what pressure are we under? Brian suggested that we're in back of the curve right now rather than being out in front.
Mr. Chairman, can I make an observation
Sure,
about that
Winiger.
as well? I want to advise the commission that there will be, I believe, on May 26th, I believe the school district is hosting a public walkthrough of the site. And there have yet to be any discussions with the city regarding potential use of the site.
Why they're hosting that?
I do not. But I believe that's going to be a public meeting, so members of the commission, I believe council members and perhaps planning commissioners are planning to attend. So I was going to bring that up anyway. But I know that I can advise you that the city council has asked to initiate negotiations or discussions at the very least with the school board or with the respective staffs. That has not yet happened. I don't believe it's going to happen until after this walkthrough. We'll provide you more information. I believe it's in the morning, but I don't want to misidentify. So to answer your question, I think time is of the essence, but there's no critical deadline at this point.
Okay. Have there been developers that are, barking in the wind here and saying, let us in here, or we have projects ready to go?
I understand that there have been informal proposals. I don't know by whom or to whom, but that nothing is imminent. And the property has only been offered to public agencies at this point. The city is the only agency that's indicated an interest in the property. It has not been offered for auction or for proposals to private elements.
Okay.
Commissioner Akins?
So one of the things, so I have friends on the council and friends on the school board. So in talking to the school, will not tell you what they think of each other, but so friends on the school board have said, and this has been publicly available, that the school board sent a 90-day notice to the city council. The city council had 90 days to respond to that notice, or at the end of the 90 days, if the city council hadn't responded to that notice, the school board was then free to do whatever they wanted to. Because by not responding, basically, they've given we're not interested heads up. So again, just what I've heard, we could ask Mr. Summers what actually is taking place, but that seemed to indicate, and again, in talking with the school board, this member, it is that the school is trying to get all of their ducks in a row, all of their I's dotted and T's crossed in order to explore the options, not to necessarily move on those options, but to explore those options. The other thing, again, going to what Mr. Winiger said, is that there has been an interest by some individuals, but again, they're trying to nail down the financials. And in order to nail down the financials, they have to find out what the interest is of the city, because of course, if the city is wanting to come in there and do certain things, that could drop the value of the property. So there's a lot that's going on outside.
Commissioner Convery?
Well, from my understanding from the report, if we landmark the entire property, that doesn't preclude any application to the California Register. So landmark the entire property. That's just straightforward, done deal. Put Chaparral Auditorium up for California Register approval. Put the elementary school up either separately or in the same breath, But I think landmarking the entire property is the best first step and the fastest best first step for us to make, to be at least headed in the right direction to protect the property.
I agree.
That's, to me, that's just basic.
I agree. The three parts together, that would be
then-
my recommendation.
Yeah, and simultaneously, the entire property should be landmarked, period. Simultaneously, we can put forth the Chaparral Auditorium for a California Register, the elementary school separately or together. I don't know what they prefer, but I
Now,
think
when-
it's pretty simple.
Now, Commissioner Conver, when you say the entire property, are you referring to the structures or
Talking
the
about
grounds, everything?
The grounds that are in this report that are up for landmark status, the whole thing, because it's the same picture that happened with the Smith Hobson House. If you don't landmark the whole thing, somebody comes along and tries to put
Yeah.
40 units of public housing in the backyard, and that's not a fit.
Commissioner James?
Brian, were you saying that the school board doesn't want to be landmarked? I was confused on that.
No, I wasn't saying that, so I'll let them speak for themselves. They were just, what I've expressed to them is that we had asked for this report some time ago, and that was because when people came to us and said, so what's historic, we could answer knowledgeably. And again, even things that were in the report, we've since found out since the report that, the kindergarten building, which isn't in this report, thanks to Mr. Walker, is significant to remember. So again, we're just trying to get educated and
Do you have
be,
any idea if other people that are involved in or for it or against it, or?
I don't. I do know that in that same meeting, in the open public statements, there were quite a few people that had their own thoughts for what should happen to that property.
But I think a lot of love was expressed for this commission. Commissioner Hill?
Yes, the element that hasn't been discussed here is the public. What is the school district or what has the city done to assess the opinions of the people, the general population of Ojai, about the school? Or is that something we should suggest, or do we want to suggest? I just throw that out as kind of the unknown.
I think the school board has had significant workshops and meetings about potential uses and, and I think their biggest fear is that landmarking would encumber the property for adaptive reuse, and I don't hold that opinion. I hold the opposite opinion. Commissioner Convery?
I don't think the general public gets to vote on landmarking the property. I think that's why we're here. We have that background, and I think that this is, I know this is a property that should be landmarked. One of the items I'm going to bring up later when we're talking down the agenda about our general duties is the Main Street program with the National Trust for Historic Preservation. And we can talk about that a little bit later, but that school is a key element in the Ojai Main Street, and that needs to be landmarked, period. There's no vote in the general public about this. I think that's a can of worms, frankly.
That's what I'm afraid of.
Well, that's why we're here, and that's why they're not. That's why it's not on the ballot. We are able to landmark this.
Yeah.
Commissioner Akins?
To just respond to Commissioner Hill, the school district got together their committee of a wide variety of people to try to decide on closing schools. I think it was the 7 committee or something like that. And so they met, they held countless numbers of public meetings. They made a decision, again, this is reported in the Ojai Valley News. Public outcry reversed that decision. There was a discussion on possibly closing some schools. They came back, they elected not to close any schools. And so, again, open public discussion, it's discussed in their open board meetings. Board meetings are recorded. Yeah. So I think they are doing everything they can to properly assess what their options are and to go through the different steps that to find out what their options are.
Yeah.
So they have been, again, they're just trying to do their job like we're trying to do our job, and I commend them for that.
As chair, I have to say, I think we should recommend to council that all three pieces be landmarked.
The entire
Wouldn't it be
property.
4 pieces, actually?
Okay.
You would have the auditorium as 1, you have the kindergarten as 2, and then it's a question of, is it just the Roy Wilson section where the tower was? Is it that section, or are we talking about the little additions here and there and so on? Greg?
Mr. Walker?
I would just like to say that what we consider the main building, which is the part up front, and then the
Right.
part that goes north-south, and then east-west in the back, that was all designed by Roy Wilson. It was just done over a period of time, but he was the architect and the overseeing architect all through that period.
Yeah.
So it's really all his design, and even that overhang was added later.
Okay.
But there will be time for public, I mean, you'll have a public hearing, right? And
Sure.
the city council would have a public hearing before they would,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So I
Commissioner
think there'll be
Convery?
lots of input.
Commissioner Hill, I think it's important to talk about landmarking the entire property. When it's discussed in sections, that opens the door to, a
Yeah.
hornet's nest. I really, truly cannot state strongly enough that this commission has to look at this as the entire property. This report it talks about the different elements, but it's about the entire property, and we really need to, I think,
The
stay
reason
strong there.
the reason I say that
Yeah.
is that after I read this and looked at all those pictures, there were some pictures that horrified me. Because
I know.
when you see,
I
that, and
yeah.
they're just, it's a wall.
It's very
and
run
it's
down. I agree.
Just one window.
I agree with you.
And the people are going to say, or whoever's they're going to criticize, why are you trying to save this?
Yes.
We're not trying to save this. We're landmarking the entire property so that when restoration happens and when adaptive
with a
reuse
plan.
happens.
It's sensitive.
It's sensitive and there's a plan and it's
Yeah.
landmark appropriate. That's what I'm standing for.
Yeah.
If you break it into pieces because there's a school bus with a flat tire in the backyard, who knows what the heck's going to happen.
For National Register, et cetera, you break it in.
No.
No.
I think it actually hurts it.
Commissioner Quinn?
Well, I think that what Mr. Winiger suggested of beefing up the report to add the mid-century modern and doing the whole property as one piece is what really makes, like the bug, makes sense. And that's what I would like to see happen. Because if we start, like I think you said, that breaking it into pieces, then you just open up a can of worms. And if we just say the whole thing is, people can come in with renovations and we can approve them or not approve them, depending on it. So that's what I would like to see happen.
I don't, is that different than what you and I are saying?
I think we're all saying the same thing. We just need to say
There-
it differently.
So are we saying that we're ready to send a recommendation to council? That's what I,
Landmark the entire property.
There's one
Commissioner
other
Hill?
thing when it comes to the entire property. Back in about the first 5 years when I was on this commission, we had a very noted architect on the commission. That was Zelma Wilson. And she loved the idea of identifying trees or groves of trees or as part of historic places and so on. And she used to always talk about the line of pepper trees that goes down along the entire front of the property on Ojai Avenue. And that was, she called it a clump. She said that clump is really important for the look and the feel of those buildings. So I know some of the ones down towards the western end of it are pretty big and they got big holes in them and so on. But nevertheless, she would like to have seen and this is from a very important architect, she would like to have seen the whole clump protected as part of the property.
So you think it's a good idea, therefore, to do things separately?
No,
No.
I didn't say that. I just said, and make sure that you include, or in my opinion, you should include that clump.
The buildings and the grounds.
Yeah.
Because this is the problem that we've run into, is that later on, someone comes in and says, well, that part of it is not landmarked, and it's in the view shed of the landmark building.
Right.
So we've made, I think that we have to recommend that my feeling is, we recommend to council that we landmark the property and the buildings.
Yeah,
Simple.
yeah.
Mr. Walker, do you want to approach?
Well, would the procedure be that you would just nominate it and then set that process in, and then the recommendation would come after you've had your public hearing?
I think so.
Because I hear you saying you want to recommend that to the council, but as I recall, it has to be nominated first and go through various hearings, and then you'll have a vote to recommend or not. Is that right?
Right, I believe you're providing direction to staff tonight to come back with that, your direction to nominate the entire property and to identify the specific elements.
Yes.
Can you be, what you were talking about, beefing up the report, could that go in ahead of our recommendation? Because I think some attention to the mid-century kindergarten building and the Roy Wilson section, that would be important. And especially the PWA down at the end.
I agree, I think you need more substantiation for your designation of the more modern building. I agree.
But you could nominate it tonight, right?
Yeah, the direction would be to direct staff to come back with a resolution nominating the entire property and specifically identifying those various
Those
elements.
pieces.
Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, just for the record, if I could have a motion and a second to provide that direction to staff.
With that, I'll entertain a motion to direct staff.
Make a motion that we direct staff to nominate the entire property at 414 East Ojai Avenue.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Hill?
I agree.
Quinn?
Yes.
James? Akins?
Yes.
Yes. Convery?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Motion carries.
Peanuts.
Item,
Go ahead.
thank you, Mr. Walker.
Thank you very much.
Bye, Craig.
Bye. Thanks.
Item 4, Ojai Arcade and Libby Park Pergola Pennant Policy.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, at your last meeting, when you evaluated sign permit for the pennants for the proposed to be put in the arcade for the youth opera performance, which is this weekend, you asked for to come back with some more information regarding the regular scheduled events. We have included a calendar
Right.
which shows the regular events, which consists of Pixie Tangerine Month, starting in March, Art in the Park, and Ojai Music Festival in May,
One-time deal.
and June. To my knowledge, those are the only regular events that are at least identified on the calendar, maintained by staff. I believe that others are approved on an ad hoc basis, then that come through the commission. But those are the regularly scheduled
So
events.
they're grandfathered in then.
That is correct.
Yeah.
With that, I'll open it up for discussion. I thought, Mr. Hill, and you can correct me, I thought that Pixie Tangerine was a one-time,
But it's just what it says there.
oh,
It says for display one time.
okay.
And yet,
There.
it's been carried over, it got carried over last year, much to our surprise, And then it's due coming up here in, I don't know when it's scheduled for,
It already happened.
it already happened. Yeah, so that's 2 years in a row.
Yeah, so it's basically, our feeling was that in order for pennants to be displayed in the arcade, that it had to refer to a community event that was taking place in the downtown core,
Right.
almost specifically Libby Park. And Pixie Tangerine Month didn't really
Yeah,
fulfill that requirement.
no.
They
I
don't-
was actually surprised to see the Pixie Tangerine Month
Yes.
banners. I didn't notice them last year. But then on the other hand, I'm really friendly with some Pixie Tangerine
Well,
farmers. And it's,
Badger.
yeah, and it's turning into, a really identifying feature with the town. Ojai is the birth of the Pixie Town. So I don't know if they're going to have a Pixie Festival and make it legitimate with these pennants, but
Well, I know that we've had people serve on this commission prior, one of whom will remain nameless, but I'm sure she's watching, who have wanted to do away with the pennant policy altogether and not have any. So we do have pressure from people in the community and past commissioners to limit and confine the pennant policy. And so that's what this is about tonight. I'm glad you did this and put it together, because the 2015 document is the one that I'm remembering. Were there any changes that we wanted to make? Commissioner Akins?
Just one thing, I haven't had a chance to watch Tuesday night's council meeting, but I do understand that Mayor Johnson asked, why the heck does the HPC touch the pennants in the downtown? And City Manager McCleary explained it to him, and he said, well, why don't they do the banner over across? And
Yeah.
City Manager McCleary explained that that's controlled by Caltrans. So the HPC and the pennants downtown in the arcade did get a mention Tuesday night. Interesting enough.
So I think we're good.
Well,
Mr.
yeah, we're good as long as somebody is managing these things and doesn't say at the desk to the Tangerine people, whoever it applies, no, you have to go through a process. One of the things that happened with the Pixie Tangerine group was that it wasn't a person from the Pixie Tangerine group that appeared before us. It was done like 2 nights before. They put together this thing, and it was a person from the Chamber of Commerce that came in here and said that they were doing it for this group. And so it was a last minute deal, and we didn't like the first pennant that they did, and I'm not real thrilled with the last one that they did either. But anyway, it just was, didn't follow the procedures.
That's right.
I have a question.
Commissioner Convery?
I have a question about that. How did the Pixie Tangerine Month pennant get approved in the first place if it's not an event? It's snuck in there, it sounds like.
It was heated. It was,
Yeah.
And
and so we gave it a
yeah.
one-time approval.
But it keeps coming back, and they just
That's an error.
stick them up there without having to come in here or
That's an error.
something, because I didn't see them this
That's what I
year.
mean. Somebody has to notify the city to hang these things.
But I'm curious, if this is Pixie Tangerine Month, what's to stop the next weird
Well,
experience?
Us?
the whole business
We'll get
was,
sued.
we have heard from other merchants in town that say, how come they get to do it
Yeah.
and we can't?
Yeah, exactly. The yoga crib or the,
Yeah,
naked
right.
gardening month was in May, actually, which we don't need to promote that, but,
Right. So it's a question of following procedures
Yes.
and being ahead of the game and alerting, maybe have a list at the desk when they come in for their approval to get a work permit to put up the lanterns or whatever it is. That'd be a
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, I think it's important to not let it slip by. Like you pointed out at our last meeting, now I understand why you were concerned about the pennant issue, because the kids' opera seemed like a perfect fit, and the pennant was great and all that, but now I can see what your concern was.
Yes.
As you said, you have friends and people that you know that are involved with Pixie Tangerines. We love them. We take them to all of our friends. I went to my orthopedic guy yesterday, and my wife had brought down a whole basket of these Pixies. And he went on and on and on when we came in there. Oh, those were the greatest. Oh, those are tremendous. And so it does spread goodwill for Ojai, and I can understand that. But we have to impress upon them, make up some sort of little festival, have some visit to the orchards or whatever.
Yeah, I think that's, well, they do good point, because Jim Churchill, who has Pixie Farm, is very involved in Food for Thought, and they do a farm tour with all the sixth graders. So maybe that's a nice way to incorporate Food for Thought, farm tour, kids, education, Pixies. It's
Advertise that,
a little more of a festival idea than a month. So good point.
If there are no further questions, then we'll move on to item 5.
Okay.
And USC School of Architecture Annual Summer Program Heritage Conservation Summer Course. I guess the dates have changed this year, so it's,
Apparently so.
Yeah.
So I don't know what we can offer, and we
Yeah.
had checked to see if there were any other dates, but apparently that's not the case. So it's rather unfortunate that they advanced it. We don't know why, but
okay.
we wanted to let you know.
No.
We asked, and
This is it.
they said that
Online.
they weren't planning on an additional section.
So we'll just watch more carefully next year.
Yes, we'll lessons learned here.
All right.
One of the things, Sherry sent out a notice, an email to us all, and she asked for a response whether we were going to go, and you can pass the word on to her that I'm not going. I just physically can't attend those classes down there.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item 6, this is a discussion item, the role of Historic Preservation Commission. I think Commissioner Convery raised this at our last meeting, so I'll turn the floor over to you.
Thank you. I think the material that's provided about what we do is pretty standard, approving pennants, et cetera, et cetera. But what I've seen over the years, not being on the commission, just seeing as a general member of the public and now being on the commission, is that it can become a little bit, I don't know it's not really wishy-washy, but it can get a little gray about what our role is, and how, as new city council people come in, they don't understand it, and we lose sort of our voice. I feel like we lost our voice a little bit on the gate when the Art Commission tonight and Kappa, we had no time. We should have spoken before they voted on it. That made no sense, because as soon as we started bringing up our issues, Christine at Kappa pointed out, hey, we already voted on this, so if you guys change anything, what the heck, So I think there's a little more definition to be had around here. So I was looking on the Pasadena Historic Preservation Commission, because they are very well-run, and I actually printed out, one for you, I just printed out some pages where they have links on their website. The City of Pasadena website has a historic link, and you can download PDFs of the buildings, and you can look at the history. People can really become more knowledgeable more easily, and I think that's something that Ojai can look into creating pretty simply.
I noticed that too, but I wonder if it's a budget.
It's just it's some web designer
Staff
can do
has
it.
time.
Yeah, they got nothing to do. But it's just a thought, I don't know what the issues are to make it happen, but it's something maybe we could talk to Pasadena about and see how they did it. Yeah, they they're available to talk to us. And another idea that I thought we might want to look into to really create a more cohesive understanding of preservation in Ojai is the National Trust Main Street program. I don't know if any of you are familiar with it.
Santa Paula had it.
Yeah, and it's really powerful. They're a really powerful group. They actually came here, the president of the National Trust and the board, which includes Linda Bruckheimer and Gloria Estefan and lots of different people, and they visited Ojai, but they were only here for a day. And I was with them, but I wasn't part of the commission at that point. The Main Street program is about, it came about 35 years ago when the Walmarts were sucking all the business out of the main streets, you know, and the big box stores were killing the downtowns. So the Main Street program was about keeping historic Main Street viable. What it has to offer basically for Ojai is they have partnerships with, for instance, Ben Franklin, which has historic paint colors, and Ben Franklin provides the paint at no charge to, you know, keep the trim painted. You know, they have a lot of opportunity to keep Main Street looking pretty good at no expense to the town, per se. And then they talk about a lot of adaptive reuse. I printed out just their paragraph about what they do, if you can bear with me. It's about revitalization, strong local leadership, and a commitment to improving the quality of life in older and historic downtowns and neighborhood commercial districts. The Main Street approach shifts the focus away from process and toward measurable outcomes. The 4 points remain an important component of the work of Main Street, but instead of serving as a primary organizing principle, they're a comprehensive revitalization framework. So they kind of offer a guidelines and an outline on how to keep Main Street cohesive and all across America. I've seen it in Oklahoma City, I've seen it in Lexington, I've seen it in Arkansas, and Hilo, Hawaii did a fantastic job on their Main Street program. And they've done these Main Street parades where the National Trust, you know, gives awards and brings you know, financial attention to the town. But in light of the historic or the landmark status coming up on the school, the issue with the little building where the St. Thomas Aquinas thrift store used to be next to Bonnie
Right.
Lou's, and it's just outside the arcade, and now it's something else, I don't know what. But all of that becomes kind of under the umbrella of the Main Street program. And then, for instance, the Chevron station, which, gosh, my mind just went blank. His first name's Paul Roby, the guy that owns Chevron on Main Street, on Ojai Avenue. Is it Paul
one right
Roby?
across from the school.
Yeah, he used to get an award for maintaining the most beautiful Chevron station in Ojai. But it's planted and it's
Yeah.
designed nicely, and that kind of thing is part of that National Trust awareness. So I just think that's something, those are the kind of things I'd like to see this commission moving toward. Some really more interaction with the community. One of the, and this, I'll stop talking after this, I promise, but one of the last items on our duties in here, which I marked and now I can't find it, is that we can print up brochures and posters and, we can print materials about preservation, which are generally in the front of City Hall. But we can also have public events and speaking events about preservation, not necessarily in this room, because this room does not reflect anyone's preservation, which is really a problem for me, because I don't even like being in here. I mean, it's really hard to make an artistic decision when you're looking at curtains that are dangling off, it's like a terrible motel. So we need to fix that, top of the list. Anyway, I'm stopping.
Mr. Hill?
Yes. Does this require, for this Main Street organization, do we have to join this, or what do we do?
Well, I'll check into it. I can talk to the National Trust and, talk how to do that. I just wanted to bring it up and bring awareness to it so that, if you have time, you can look it up and see. I'll email the National Trust. There's a group, I've been spending some time in Oklahoma City for Business, which is incredibly intact architecturally, partly because they didn't have any money for so many years. But all the 30s and 40s and 50s buildings, I mean, it's phenomenal. And they have an incredible Main Street program and a group called Downtown OKC, which the president is a pretty good friend of mine. So I can talk to her to see. She leads Main Street programs all around the country. She comes to California all the time. She works with Santa Barbara. You know, I think she'd be happy to come here and shape us up.
You know, what you say is, it's very interesting because every day, and if I'm out of town or in someplace else, and that's what I'm doing tonight, one of the programs I watch, and you're going to laugh because the guy's kind of a cornball, but I watch Hauser every night. And he goes to these towns, approximately the size of Ojai, or maybe a little bit bigger, and they have these marvelous downtowns where they've really made an effort to save the downtown and save the look. And people love to come to these towns.
Yeah,
So,
they're probably part of this. It's something we need to start looking into.
yeah.
Thank you. Item 7. 7? Did I jump? No.
What's,
Retreat.
Discussion of a Historic Preservation Commission retreat. We had talked about that briefly last time and how we used to do that. And Mr. Commissioner Hill and his lovely wife Claire used to host. It's typically something that we did in the beginning of the year after the election of new officers. But I think it's something that we need to reinstate.
well,
Hill?
the question was brought up to me at the last time, would my wife and I, would we be willing to have, to host a retreat? And I said, well, I need to get a calendar then, and I can offer you, if you want to do this, we arbitrarily said that we have to do it by the 1st of July, if we're going to do one this year. And I can give you 3. We always did them on Saturday, so anybody who worked could attend the meeting on a Saturday. So here's the dates that we have available. The 27th of May, the 3rd of June, and the 17th of June. So those are all open dates for us.
What was the third date? June what?
17th of June.
Isn't that a Sunday?
No, it's a Saturday. I got the calendar right in my hand.
Okay.
These are all 3 Saturdays?
All 3 Saturdays.
That's a Saturday.
So,
I'm going to be real stick here. I can't do any of these,
Yeah.
but I do endorse the idea. I'm taking a class that ends on,
unless you want to go farther into the year.
The 24th of June? Do you think, let's call Claire right now.
That she looked at, she figured out everything in between now and the 1st of July.
So it'd have to be after the 1st.
Yeah, so you would have to go July 1st, would be the next day going on, farther on. And I don't think she even looked at that day.
Darwin, are you available on a Sunday?
Yeah, let me,
4th of
I can
June?
call her right now. She's at home.
Is that verboten?
Get my old antique
I don't have my calendar with
phone
me.
here.
Oh.
They don't make phones like this. Not anymore. Yep, I'm doing it too soon. Come on.
Maybe we should send have an email sent to all the commissioners? Because Brian
Yeah,
isn't
Brian
here and
left.
you don't have your calendar.
We can poll.
Why don't we do that?
out a poll and then
Okay.
out what dates work for Commissioner Hill.
Yeah.
I'd like to do that.
And in the meantime, Terry, are you calling Claire?
Yeah.
That's a joke.
And I just, it'll give her a heads up.
Let's do it that way, Mr. Winiger, because I'm unsure on my dates, actually.
I think that's good.
Hi, I'm at the commission meeting and we're talking about the calendar, and people are having difficulty with the 3 dates that you, and so what we're going to do, we're going to send out, how far into the year did you go past July? Yeah. No, because people have to consult their calendars. So, but I just want you to know that. Okay. Yeah. See ya. Yep. Okay. Bye.
Thank you.
She's watching it on TV.
Thank you.
Claire, can you hear me? Is it
I cut
possible?
her off already.
Is there any possibility that we might be able to include a Sunday here or there if
Well,
the Saturdays are too difficult? Just saying, maybe that's
Yeah.
a possibility.
I'll
If
ask
that's
her.
not a problem.
But, you know,
Yeah.
So with that, I think that covers all our items. Any future agenda items, Mr. Winiger, that we need to be notified of?
To my knowledge, there are no current items scheduled for the next couple of months. My guess is that something will appear, but we will be coming back to you with the revised report that you discussed this evening. I've had a couple of conversations with the city attorney regarding a formal resolution on the Smith-Hobson house, but that may come back to you as well.
Thank you. Are there any other commissioner comments? Commissioner Hill?
the notification that we asked about last time was how, or I should say, where are you in dealing with the vacancy on our commission?
My understanding is that the city clerk will be soliciting persons who are interested in not only that, but I believe there's a vacancy on the Parks and Recreation Commission. So I think there's a couple of vacancies that the city clerk is going to be recruiting for.
Okay, I think that we already have recruits in for the Historic Preservation Commission.
I don't know if they're still accepting them or if they've stopped or they've concluded that process. I'll check it. I'll check on that.
One of the candidates is in the audience.
With that, if there is no further business, we are adjourned.